In today's real estate exam prep video, we're going to continue our vocabulary word series, those important words you have to know for your real estate licensing exam. And we're starting right now. Hey everyone, my name is Paul Vacheski, and welcome to the Real Estate Classroom YouTube channel, where my mission is simple: to help you pass your real estate exam the first time. And man, those key real estate vocabulary terms go a long way of you achieving that goal. Today we're going to do 161 through 169 of 300, and it starts with our very first word or term. It's independent contractor. Now, 99.9999% of all real estate professionals in the United States is an independent contractor. If you're an independent contractor, it simply means that you are in one category, and that is self-employed. You have your own business. You are your own business. Really not unlike if you went out and started a yogurt franchise, right? You are responsible for your own schedule, your own taxes, everything. Key thing you have to remember about an independent contractor in relation to real estate is, number one, you schedule your own work schedule. Your broker cannot tell you when you have to be in the office, when you got to show up to do prospecting. They have no control over your schedule whatsoever. Number two is your broker can't determine your dress code for you. Number three, you pay all your own tax liabilities. So, if you're an employee, your employer is going to have to pay certain parts of your tax liability. So, for example, your FICA, they pay half and you pay half. Here, you got to pay the whole thing. And you have to pay estimated taxes and those type of things. Your broker cannot mandate that you attend certain training events. They can't mandate that you come to sales meetings, those type of things. And then you file as an independent contractor. Most of you are going to file what's called a Schedule C on your 1040 tax return. Now, if you live in a state where that state allows you to be a real estate professional and operate as a S corporation or a limited liability company, then there's a different form. Point is here is you are responsible for your own business tax filings. That is an independent contractor. Number 162, a comparable market analysis. In the business, we refer to it as a CMA. Now, a CMA is basically just an estimate of the home's current market value. That is so important. Now, market value is defined as a price at which a willing buyer will buy and a willing seller will sell. And we come up with this current market value based on homes that are similar to our property that we're trying to determine value on, that have sold recently. We use, average market times for that area, the number of offers that we're seeing in that area, those type of things, which does differ from a fee-based appraisal report. A lot of times appraisers will argue that a CMA really should be done the same way as a CMA, an appraisal, and that's simply not true. So the best way to describe it is a fee appraisal is a history report of the area where they're looking at comparables that have sold within the last 6 months. A CMA is the market value today, and the agent is going to use a lot of different points of data to determine that. All right, it's a little bit more up to date as far as valuation than an appraisal. And what we're seeing in today's market and many markets across the country is there is a discrepancy between what buyers are willing to buy and sellers are willing to sell, and what the ultimate appraisal comes back at as far as valuation. And we're finding that we're, as agents, having to deal with that on a regular basis. Why do we do CMAs? Number one, we do a CMA, or a comparable market analysis, to determine what we want to list a home for on the market. And also, buyer's agents should be using them as well. We want to make sure that our buyer isn't paying more than the home is worth. And if they are, which they are in many markets, we are at least advising them accurately. right? So that's the point of a comparable market analysis. Number 163 is a listing contract. What is a listing contract? Well, I actually did a video, a really good video on the different specific listing contracts that are out there. If you want to check that out, here's a link up here in the upper right-hand corner to that video. So a listing contract is essentially an employment contract between the listing broker and the seller. That's very important that you remember that for your real estate licensing exam, all right? Now, sometimes the real estate exam will ask you, or they'll reference the brokerage firm, and that's fine. But just remember, every brokerage firm has one designated broker that operates it. So the listing contract is between the broker, the designated broker, and the seller. Now, in most areas of the country, the designated broker doesn't go on listing appointments. It is the agent that goes out, and the agent signs all the listing contracts and the listing documentation. And the reason they can do that is because there is an agency relationship between the salesperson or associate broker and the designated broker, and it's a general agency relationship. And remember from that video we discussed where under general agency, then the agent can speak on behalf of the broker and sign those documents. But ultimately, in the end, the listing contract is between the broker and the seller. That's the first thing you have to know. Number two, it outlines all the terms and conditions of that sale, meaning what is the list price? At what point is what price is the seller willing to offer the property? Under what terms and conditions are they willing to offer the property for sale? Now that may end up differing from the final offer that's agreed to between the buyer and seller in the purchase contract, but this is what is the seller willing to offer? What terms are they willing to offer the market to sell their property? In exchange, then the real estate broker receives a commission. Remember, now let's talk about 4 of the main types of listing contracts that you need to know for your real estate exam. Number 1 is an exclusive right to sell. That's probably 99.9% of all of the listing contracts that realtors and agents enter into with their clients. But the important thing you have to remember under this type of listing contract, the seller is required to pay the listing broker a commission regardless of where the buyer comes from or who procured the buyer. So it could be where the seller does their own open house on a Sunday. There is a buyer that comes through that open house, and maybe the seller sat down with that buyer and wrote up the contract, basically didn't even use the listing agent to write up this contract. Once that buyer and seller agree using that homemade contract, guess what? The broker still gets paid a commission even though they weren't involved in it. That's because exclusive right to sell, the seller is obligated to pay a commission no matter who or where that buyer is procured. The next type of listing is what's called an exclusive agency. Now that is sometimes confusing, right? Remember, exclusive agency simply means an exclusive listing contract. It is a type of listing contract. And so often students get it confused with agency. So please don't do that. There's really no such thing as an exclusive agency relationship, but there is an exclusive agency listing contract. This allows the listing broker to market the property, and if through their own efforts procure a buyer, then the listing broker is entitled to a commission. And that includes things like putting the details of the listing out on the multiple listing service or out on Zillow, Trulia, those type of things. But it also allows the seller to retain the right that if they procure their own buyer, then they don't have to pay a commission. So maybe in reality, the problem with an exclusive listing agency is, let's say, for example, the buyer sees an ad on social media that the broker put out. So they drive by the house. The seller had put a sign out in the front yard that says that they're going to do their own open house Sunday from 1 to 4. So Sunday, that buyer then comes through the open house, and then the seller writes up the offer. So who procured the buyer? Was it through the efforts of that social media ad that the broker put out, or was it because of the open house that the seller did? That is the problem with exclusive agencies. You don't have to go that deep for the real estate exam. All you have to know is under exclusive agency, the broker gets a commission if they procured the buyer. The seller does not have to pay a commission if they procured the buyer. Number 166, an open listing. This allows the seller to hire as many listing brokers as they want, and only the broker that produces the buyer is entitled to the commission. So let's say the seller goes out and hires company A, B, and C. And A, B, and C, they have marketing, they put it out on the MLS, out on Zillow, and all of that. Let's say company F, an outside cooperating broker, they have a buyer, they call company A, listing company A, to schedule the showing, and then they decide they want to write an offer, so they submit the offer to listing company A, and the offer comes together and it goes to closing. So listing company A would be the company that gets paid the commission because they procured that buyer. Number 167, a net listing. Now, in many states, net listings are not legal. I'm in Nebraska, and we are one of the few states where net listings still are legal. So a net listing is where the broker agrees to accept a commission or anything above a reserved purchase price as the commission. So let's say that the seller calls company A and says, I want to sell my house. I need to net $100,000. Anything above and beyond that is your commission. So the listing broker lists it for $125,000, and a deal comes together. It goes to closing. The seller gets their net of $100,000, and then the broker gets to keep the difference in as a commission. Again, these are not legal in most states. So make sure that on your state side of your exam, when you're studying for your state side, that you know whether in your state a net listing is legal or not. Number 168, the multiple listing service. It's commonly referred to as the MLS. And the multiple listing service is a tool to help listing brokers find cooperative brokers that are working with buyers to help them sell their listing. Okay, now, the key thing to remember here is only members of the National Association of Realtors have access to the multiple listing service. All right. If you don't know, you need to know that everyone is a real estate licensed agent, but not everyone is a realtor. Realtors are members of the trade association called the National Association of Realtors. Many licensees are not members. You have to know the difference, but only realtor members have access to the multiple listing service. And then last but not least for this video is the Sherman Antitrust Act. And I did a previous video where we really dove deep into the Sherman Antitrust Act. You might want to check that out. So the Antitrust Act, it impacts many, many industries, but how it impacts the real estate industry is what I have on your screen. It prohibits competing brokers, real estate associations and governing bodies, and multiple listing services from agreeing to price fix, boycott, allocation of customers or markets, and tie-in agreements. So what I mean by that is basically if two or more companies, or let's say we have a local board of realtors and there are 100 members. If two or more of those members conspire, that's what we're talking about. Basically, if two or more parties or brokers or organizations, they conspire to do price fixing, group boycotting, allocating customers and markets, or tie-in agreements, then that's an antitrust violation. So let's look at each one of these specifically. Number one is price fixing. If let's say two brokers within a market. Maybe they're the majority shareholder. So if you combine the two, they make up a majority of the market share. That's not a requirement. But this is where typically we've seen these issues where broker A, broker B, together they own or they control 60% of the local market. They get together, they conspire and say, if you only charge 7% on your listings, we'll only charge 7%. Therefore, we're going to be guaranteed a 7% commission. That is price fixing, all right? Group boycotting is where two or more brokers were to get together and say, we don't like company A, and so let's try to put them out of business or reduce their market share or somehow penalize them. The reasons don't matter. But let's say that two brokers don't like this third broker, so they all agree to boycott this particular company. That is group boycotting, and it is illegal under the antitrust laws. So the next one I want to talk about is allocating customers or markets. And where we have seen this typically and historically is, let's say we have two major players in a local market, Company A and Company B. So Company A and B agree. They conspire. They agree that any properties south of Main Street is going to be Company's A jurisdiction. Any housing or real estate transactions north of Main Street is Company B's area of operation. And they promise not to poach in each other's territories. That would be an example of allocating customers or markets. And then the last one is what we call a tie-in agreement. Now, this doesn't have to be two or more parties conspiring to do this. And the most common areas that we really see this in the real estate world is where a single agent, one agent, they go to a seller and they say, listen, normally I charge 7% in commission, but if you agree to guarantee that you will use me on the buy side of the transaction, then I will reduce the listing commission to, let's say, 4%. So the listing agent's going to take a 4% listing with the guarantee that the seller is going to use them when they buy. Because remember, they're going to sell a house and then they have to buy a house. That is considered a tie-in agreement, and those are illegal in real estate because they violate the Sherman Antitrust Act. Now, if you're going to continue studying, check out this video right here. I highly recommend it. If you have not subscribed, click the little circle to my left, comments and questions down below, and share this video. See you all next time.